That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, for a lot of weeks in a row, well, maybe not weeks in a row. There have been some bye weeks, some games that Alabama didn't play, but for every time we've done one of these game preview situations, I always say, well, hopefully on Monday we're getting back on here and we're talking about an Alabama win. And boy, do we have a win to talk about a long time, multiple months. Today is not one of those days, though, unfortunately. And not only is this not a win, this is a pretty ugly loss. And we're going to be talking about the college football playoffs. I mean, obviously, a little bit about Oklahoma. I'm sure there will be some things that come up. But, I mean, the main topic of today, because right now, despite the fact that Alabama was very fortunate to have still made it into the college football playoffs, their hopes for a possible national championship are still alive. They've got a lot to work on between now and December 19th when you take the field in Norman against Oklahoma, who just recently beat you. So before we get into all of that stuff, though, what were some of as you're watching this game unfold, this SEC championship game, 28-7 final score, was down 21-0 at one point. What were you kind of thinking as far as Alabama's performance and, of course, of Georgia's performance as well?
Oh, boy, so much. First of all, credit to Georgia. I mean, credit to Georgia. That's a really, really good football team. If you told me today that Georgia wins the national championship, I will not be surprised. That's a very, very elite football team. And I know that in football, one fun thing you always tell your team, hey, it's about us. It's not about them. It's always about us. Well, that's what you tell your team. And that is somewhat true, especially when you're Alabama as good as Alabama is. But let's be real here. There's two teams on the field that is also saying, hey, it's about us and not about them. And Georgia's just really good. You're going to lose a lot of the one-on-one matchups in that game just because they fill the field with future NFL players that are extremely well coached by Kirby's great staff. Great Georgia team. And so I want to give them credit, so it's not to say, hey, this is a complete and utter failure on Alabama's part. It is, and we're going to get to that. But a big reason that it was such a complete and utter failure is the really good team on the other side of the line of scrimmage that whipped you. Now, overall, I thought the defense, I just want to give a quick shout out to the defense. I know we're going to cover it all. The defense, I thought, played well enough to even win the game. Well, I don't even go beyond that. The defense did play well enough to win the game. Georgia didn't even have 300 yards of offense. As a matter of fact, they held Georgia to 80 less rushing yards than they did in the game in September. The offense and special teams repeatedly gave Georgia opportunity after opportunity. Their average starting field position was their own 40. And then one possession, Alabama the offense handed them the ball inside the 10-yard line. I think overall the defense played well enough to beat the Georgia Bulldogs, but the offense and special teams was pretty disastrous. I mean, the offense just flat out couldn't move the ball at all against this great Georgia defense, and special teams was just one miscue after another, very reminiscent of the Oklahoma loss, which the special teams heavily contributed to. But the offense and the special teams is why Alabama lost the game, and lost the game badly. Offense and special teams, not only not scoring enough points, you gifted Georgia field position, both offense and special teams all day. Alabama's starting field position, show how bad special teams was and how the offense just didn't move the ball. Georgia's starting field position average, their own 40. Alabama's was their own 18. That's the average. Their own 18-yard line. The best starting field position Alabama had all night long is their own 25. That's as good as it ever got. So a touchback. I mean, that's as good as it ever got. So now we'll get into the weeds just slightly later in the show in terms of why it was so bad on offense and special teams. But that's why Alabama lost the game. I mean, there's just no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the red zone defense was not good in this football game. Mm-hmm. It was not. That's the one thing you can say overall, good performance by the defense. And granted, when you're constantly being put in those situations, you're gonna allow points. I mean, it's statistically. I mean, you can't just expect them to continue to figure out ways to get turnovers or stops. But the fact that they pretty much it's red zone trip, it's touchdown, and it wasn't their fault necessarily that in a lot of those, most of those instances that Georgia was in the red zone, but their inability, their third down red zone defense. I mean, I want to say that Georgia went like 3 for 3 with 3 touchdown passes on third downs down on the goal line. And then, of course, you had the rushing touchdown as well. And I don't think that was on third down. So that is, the one complaint that I would have for the defense. Got to be able to, sometimes your offense or your special teams are going to put you in predicaments. Like that's just part of it. You've got to be able to bow up and hold them to a field goal. That's a win for the defense when you're able to do that. Or, do what you've done in a lot of these other games. A pick six down on the goal line against Tennessee, a forced fumble against Diego Pavia to really flip momentum when you could have gone down multiple scores. You didn't see anything like that, but they're playing really good football overall. And I just wish that it would have been great if the offense and or special teams could have helped them out in this football game. And really, you can say that in some ways for the Oklahoma game as well. Now, that was to be expected against that offense. Oklahoma's offense has really struggled. Not maybe as bad as Alabama's, but pretty darn close. So, I mean, but this game, like Georgia's got a good offense. And granted, I mean, 20 of 26 for Gunnar Stockton, that's 77% completion percentage. 3 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers by Georgia's offense. I mean, that's all great. Now, granted, he averaged like 6 yards an attempt. So it wasn't anything special. We didn't have to do a whole lot. They ran the football fairly effectively at times, in some key moments. There were some third downs, and we'll get to, especially attacking on the perimeter, getting things, C gap and outside. Saw them do some really good things. But, I mean, overall, I was – and when you lose LT Overton, you lose Kelby Collins, Justin Jefferson goes out of the game early. Xavier Brown goes out of the game early. Like these things start to mount a little bit, and yet they still continue to play pretty good football. Now, one of the things, and this is, we're going to have a lot of points to discuss regarding the defense. And right now, I guess everybody can figure out we're starting with Alabama's defense going against Georgia's offense, and then we'll flip to the other side. That's the conversation nobody wants to have, but we're going to have it. We're going to start with some of this good, at least. I thought it was interesting. Quay Russaw played 25 snaps in the game. Yanze Pierre played 44. Justin Hill played 44. I personally thought it was very strange. Now, granted, maybe not strange. Maybe that's the wrong word. I thought Quay Russaw was a lot closer to being able to assume a full-time workload than I guess he was. That's the only thing I can come up with. I don't think it's that Justin Hill had some phenomenal week of practice, and they're like, man, we're going to get him as many snaps as Yanze Pierre, who's been one of our best defensive players, regardless of position, and more snaps than Quay Russaw, who's still a really, really, really good football player and who had been your starter. I don't think that was the goal. So that tells me, because we talked about it, that because Georgia goes so 12 personnel heavy, you were going to see a lot of 3-4 looks. And when, not necessarily in alignment always, but 3-4 personnel. And you did. So you had 2 Wolves, 2 outside linebackers on the field at the same time, quite a bit. And I thought it was kind of strange how it started off with Yanze Pierre as the lone starter on the first snap. Immediately on the second snap, Justin Hill is in there as that other outside linebacker. And then a lot of times it felt like that Yanze Pierre was subbing with Quay Russaw to the boundary side rather than Quay Russaw coming in for Justin Hill. Now, granted, he did for Justin Hill as well. You saw Yanze and Quay on the field at the same time. It just wasn't for nearly as many snaps as I was kind of hoping. How big of a part do you think that played? And what did you think about Justin Hill's performance? We'll start there.
I thought Justin Hill was good. See, I always evaluate players. Maybe it's a little different than some of y'all. Doesn't mean, I always start with this when I'm evaluating players' performance. How old is he? And how much has he played? I mean, I always start that. I don't judge them all the same. I know many of y'all do, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I judge each of them by how old they are and how much have they played. I think considering he was a true freshman in year one, I thought he was pretty phenomenal. Now, was he an outstanding SEC outside linebacker in the game? Probably not. Probably not. Average, maybe an average performance per what you would get out of an experienced SEC outside linebacker. But for a freshman, I thought he's pretty phenomenal to play such a huge role and to make some standout plays and to not have any apparent big busts. But the big story to me was exactly as you said, that Quay Russaw didn't play as many snaps as we thought. I agree that's probably a pitch count situation that I didn't anticipate him having. I would assume he was good to go. Shout out to me and you both on last week's show for saying, hey, watch for this. They're going to play a lot of two outside linebackers at once. They did it the first time they played Georgia, and they're going to do it again. So we did make that call. If you add up the snaps of Russaw, Hill, Yanze Pierre, and a couple for Noah Carter, though that number of snaps at Wolf goes far beyond the number of snaps at Bandit. Only 2 Bandits played at all. Keely and Renaud, they played roughly the same amount. I think it's roughly 31 to 25, somewhere in there, my recollection. So the Bandits together, 56 snaps, and there was, I think, 69 in the game for the defense. The Wolves played far beyond that. Here's another interesting thing about the snap count for y'all to show how often we were in a certain personnel alignment. Red Morgan is the only Husky that played in the game. Deshaun Jones played no snaps. Red Morgan played every single snap at Husky. It was for one half of the snaps. Alabama played literally one half of the game with only 4 DBs on the field. I can't tell y'all how rare that is for Alabama, who kind of comes out a nickel and stays a nickel. In 2024, Alabama was a nickel like probably 95% of all snaps all year. I mean, it's a whopping amount. This year, they've changed it up a little bit. They go regular, they go nickel, they go dime. No dime against Georgia. It was Red Morgan only playing half the snaps. That tells me they literally went with the front 7 in this game. Sometimes Alabama just plays a front 6 and 5 DBs. They went with the front 7. Why do you do that? Georgia's physicality in the run game, Georgia being in 12 personnel almost all the time. I think that's why Alabama went to a 3-4 defense in this game. Oftentimes Alabama's in a 3-3. It kind of looks like a 4-2, but personnel-wise, it's 3 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers almost all the time. Against Georgia, they do it different. 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers is the normal set against them. That's why you saw those packages. And again, nickel only half the time. Again, I can't stress how big a change that is from 2024. Shows how Kane Wommack's defense has evolved in year 2, and it's better in year 2. And hey, considering you had injuries, LT Overton out, Kelby Collins out, Justin Jefferson banged up. Dijon Lee couldn't even go. Damani Jackson played every snap in the game. I bet that's without looking it up, that has to be the first time in 2025. Probably didn't happen in 2024 either, that Damani was out there for every single snap, but he was because Dijon Lee was thought he probably wouldn't go, but then Zabian got hurt and Dijon had to play hurt. Guess what? Dijon played hurt along with most everyone else on the field. But so the defense is banged up, but not nearly as banged up as the offense is.
Right.
But considering the defense is somewhat banged up and injured and LT Overton out, I give the defense a great grade in this game because they played in the SEC championship game and the defense gave Alabama a chance to not only avoid a blowout, to win the game. I thought again, less than 300 yards, 80 rushing yards less than the September matchup. Gunnar Stockton was efficient, but like you said, only 6 yards per attempt. So Gunnar Stockton didn't pass you silly or pass you crazy. He just didn't give anything away. There wasn't a lot of incompletions. There were no interceptions. I've read some Gunnar Stockton disrespect here and there, not just on boards, but social media and even text to me from friends. I don't get it. I think the kid's he's one of the better quarterbacks in the country if you factor in leading his team to wins. Gunnar Stockton's a winner. That's a winning quarterback, even in the toughest conference in the country. I think Gunnar Stockton's great, and but the defense I think is really good. I'm ready to partially slaughter the offense in my next segment, but defensively, again, they played good enough to win this game, which means the defense played good enough to be SEC champions.
Yeah, and to your point, so I did tally it up: 69 defensive snaps according to Pro Football Focus for Alabama. The Wolves were on the field for 118 of those. So that tells you, like, it's like, I think 2 times, I mean, that would be 138. If you doubled, 69 snaps, if they were on the field, 2 of them for the entirety of the game, that'd be 138 snaps, 118. So a huge percentage. Now, they weren't in 3-4 personnel necessarily for all of that. You saw some situational stuff where maybe it's not 3-4, it's just I guess 2-4-5, I guess, things like that. But overall, yes, a ton of 3-4. Something else that's interesting. So Zay Mincy got 2 snaps in this football game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he has played double-digit snaps in every single game other than one other game. Do you know what game that was?
When he didn't play double-digit snaps? Might have been Auburn. Was it not Auburn?
Georgia.
Oh, wow. So it's a bad matchup issue for them. Because I was going to guess, Clint, Zay had some struggle moments against Auburn.
Bingo.
Yep. It's one of those 2 answers. They don't like him in the Georgia matchup, which makes sense based on what you just said. But he also had some struggles against Auburn, and that might have been hey, you might need to sit a few more snaps in this game, because Hubbard and Sabb both played great against Auburn, and Hubbard and Sabb I thought were pretty good against Georgia. I think Sabb kind of made it giving up one of the touchdowns, but I think when you put Mincy on the field, who's great, but people have to keep in mind when you put Mincy on, either Hubbard or Sabb come off.
That's right, and because you didn't do a whole lot. Now, granted, you'll see the 3 safety looks in some of those 3rd and long situations. How many 3rd and longs was Georgia really in? What's crazy is the defense constantly, especially like in the second half, they were constantly putting Georgia's offense in 2nd and longs, and then Georgia would get chunk gains to make it very manageable 3rd downs. It was so frustrating to watch because it was like, okay, it's 2nd and 14 right now. Sometimes it was like a penalty that would do it, or it was a tackle for loss, but it would be like 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 13 or something. The next thing you know, it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 4. And it's like, can we get this in a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 8? So you didn't have as many opportunities. That's part of it. But he averaged in all of the other games, other than the 2 Georgia matchups, he has averaged 17.8 snaps per game. So almost 18 snaps. And he played 2 on Saturday. He played 5 in the first. So he was averaging 3.5 snaps just against Georgia. Fewer, the matchup is not going to allow necessarily for as much. And like Bray Hubbard, his physicality and the fact that he can roll down, play closer to the line of scrimmage. Keon Sabb's been playing pretty good football. But at the same time, something else to point out is that Zay Mincy, through the first, probably 8 or 9 games, he didn't have a single missed tackle. He has had, prior to only playing 2 snaps against Georgia, against Eastern Illinois, against Oklahoma, and against Auburn, he had 4 total. And so that's 4 in the last 3 games, or prior to Saturday. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't think he's playing his best football right now. I haven't thought he's been playing his best football. That's been disappointing to see, but I know that he's still a very talented kid. They still got high hopes for him. He's probably going to be a starter next year, depending on what happens with Bray and or Keon Sabb. So definitely not. It's just I found that interesting. But to get back to kind of the 3-4 and just everything that you saw initially through, I thought Justin Hill made a couple of really, really good plays. But I thought a lot of their perimeter runs, and I say perimeter like, C gap to sideline, off tackle, outside zone, whatever. I thought it was Justin Hill's fault. But a lot of times as you go back and you watch and you're looking at gap responsibility, I actually think in a lot of those instances he was being correct, not, he was supposed to have the inside gap, and then of course the running back or whatever would end up going to the outside gap that you would think that he was supposed to be responsible for. So my point in saying that is I still think there are times where he when he comes up at the point of attack, he's kind of, he doesn't leverage the football back inside consistently. But I also think that it wasn't as apparent or as evident as I thought it was initially watching the Georgia game. So my point in saying all that is to say, I do think he played better than I initially thought. Still think there's some inconsistency, but I wanted to at least come on here and say, hey, that's something that I go back and I watch and I say, I come away feeling a little bit different. And he did make some crazy plays in space. And I know we talk about Quay Russaw. I've talked about Bray Hubbard potentially being a guy who could slide down and play some, second level off ball linebacker. Why don't we talk about Justin Hill? Just watching that cat move in space and stuff. He's fluid. He's long. He looks from a body type standpoint not too far off of Jahad Campbell. And I think he's got similar versatility. He's not the same player, but I think, just watching him play in space, he is a better space player than Quay Russaw, even though I think Russaw is pretty decent at that.
The tackle he made one-on-one, I think on Nate Frazier, keeping him 1 yard short of the first down. That was just crazy good. I don't care if you're a freshman, sophomore, 5th year, senior, 3rd year in the NFL. I don't care. That was an impressive play where in the open field against one of the better SEC running backs, keeping him a yard short of that first down. That was a phenomenal play. What a heck of a player he's going to be. And it'll be interesting to see about how they deal with losing 3 senior inside linebackers. People talk about the transfer portal. People talk about, you've talked about, hey, maybe Bray Hubbard, maybe Justin Hill, maybe maybe Quay Russaw, maybe you've got some internal options there, and it's not just the portal. I'll just say this. I'm not saying they're going to be superstars, and I'm not there in practice every day. And even if I was, I'm not sure I would have a different opinion. But I'm just saying, I like Caden Jones. I like QB Reese. I like Luke Metz. Might surprise people that Abdul Sanders is not even redshirting this year. He played enough games to not even redshirt. Duke Williams has as much. Duke's got as much upside as any of them. He's played some on special teams this year.
Duke Johnson.
I call him Duke Williams all the time.
That Auburn receiver. Big fan.
That's probably where I'm getting that from. My Auburn obsession. Duke Johnson. He's got as much upside as any of those guys in the room. I'm just saying, maybe you just develop your own guys that you got, because I like them all, but I'm sure they're not going to be comfortable with the complete lack of playing experience there. That's why I suspect transfer portal's option A. Option B is moving somebody, whether it's Quay or Justin or potentially even Bray.
I don't remember exactly what the timeline looks like, but one of the big things like Justin Okoronkwo, maybe Jeremiah Alexander, even though I just don't think he was a schematic fit. So I think he was moving on anyways. Who was the other big one? Because Sean Murphy had already left. Maybe it was just Justin Okoronkwo. But to me, the coaching staff elected, when they thought they were losing Deontay Lawson and Justin Jefferson, they went to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
But you had several true freshmen coming in who were going to be playing off-ball linebacker. Justin Okoronkwo was only going to be a redshirt freshman, or a sophomore, excuse me. I think he played a lot on special teams. And so, maybe them being a year, maybe it'll look different now, where it's like they've seen some of their guys and they feel more confident, but they'll all be really young. I think QB Reese, I completely agree with you. I think between QB Reese and Caden Jones, 2 really solid options, but all 3 of those guys behind them, I mean, that's one of those positions in the offseason where I'm going to say it's anybody's game. I could see any of those players stepping up, maybe a couple of them, depending on if they move somebody or whatever, and end up being the dude, and not only being the dude, but also being a good player for Alabama. So I'm going to love that competition. They might go like Nick Saban probably would go the safe, let's go get an experienced player route. He wouldn't rely, even though you like a lot of the options, it just always felt like in those situations, when you looked at the experience, if they didn't have it at a position, the number one that stood out at the time, was like Jahmyr Gibbs is one where it's like, okay, well, that's just a different caliber of player. And if that player comes available and he wants to come to Tuscaloosa, you let that player come. But there are like other times where the experience is like they got options, young guys, really talented guys. It's just like how we're talking about this group. And then he'd say, well, we'll let one of those guys emerge. We'll let all of them fight it out for one spot, but we're not going to rely on two of those guys emerging or putting a guy like Quay Russaw, sliding him to off-ball linebacker and then just handing him the job, not knowing exactly what it's going to look like. So you get the transfer portal guy, then if you move Quay and Quay ends up being that guy that battles it out and wins and he makes that transition, you let him do it, great. If not, you got those other. So like I don't know how Kalen DeBoer, Kane Wommack, all those guys will approach it. This is an off-season question, getting a little carried away, I guess, but it is something that I've thought about because that is a very critical position in Kane Wommack's defense. Positions, multiple. And so, I thought Deontay Lawson played well. Yeah. Nakai Hill-Green, missed tackle on Gunnar Stockton that, ended up, I think, setting them up for a short and a lot more manageable because he whiffed. But overall, I thought he played pretty well. Justin Jefferson made some pretty good plays. But I don't know, like this linebacking group, it's intriguing. Georgia, now Chauncey Bowens did get hurt and he didn't play the entire game, and I'm sure that affected things. But overall, I actually think they did a pretty decent job of slowing down or limiting Georgia's run game. And you didn't see the chunks in the run game that you saw in the first matchup. Now, they didn't necessarily need it in this one. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of long fields to get chunk gains, and they did rip off, when they needed some runs. They certainly got some respectable ones, some 10, 15, close to 20-yard runs, but there was nothing. It wasn't as bad as it was in the first matchup.
No, I agree. If you look at Georgia's numbers, no one on Georgia's offense had a big night. I mean, I would say Gunnar Stockton was close because of the 20 of 26, and he didn't turn the ball over, but it wasn't a spectacular hand him the Heisman night at all. I mean, he was fine. Nate Frazier, fine. Chauncey Bowens hurt. Even outside, I mean, Zachariah Branch is the guy you got to worry about. That's 2 games now. Alabama's played Zachariah Branch. He's been pretty quiet. Now, of course, he's there. Of course, he's going to do something because he's an extremely talented kid. But Delp didn't light us up. Lawson, Lucky Lawson, Lucky, I guess he prefers to go by that. I think he because I like Lucky Lawson better. It sounds like a cowboy. Lawson Lucky's just any other dude from Georgia, but Lucky Lawson, that sounds like a cowboy. And
sounds like a cigarette. I don't know,
like Tombstone. Like, well, here comes Lucky Lawson. But anyway, he didn't have a big night. Oscar Delp didn't. I think the defense just they did their job. I mean, the defense's job is to give your team a chance to win. They absolutely did that. And what happened was, quote, not their fault, and overcame injuries. They overcame injuries the offense could not. And I'm sure we'll tee that up next.
Yeah. I will say on the screen to Zachariah Branch that went for a touchdown, that was really the biggest dagger. I mean, there was daggers before that, but it was kind of the one made it 28 and really put it away. That was Red Morgan being overly aggressive, and he was trying to, based off of, I don't remember what type of screen it was. I'd have to go back and watch, but Zachariah Branch was coming underneath. They threw him the pass, and he's thinking he's going to be working inside. So he goes ahead and starts working across the face of the, receiver or tight end who was ever out in front of him trying to block him. But he was working into the gap of, I think, Deontay Lawson. They end up in the same gap. And then Zachariah Branch cuts to the outside, which is where Red Morgan's supposed to be. And it was just a wide open lane. So that was Red Morgan 100% on that particular play. He was aggressive. He was trying to make a play, but it's just, you got to be gap sound. And so they weren't above, some issues. They're not going to be. This is a top 5 football team. This
is number perfect. Georgia's going to make plays. I mean, they're going to make 100%. Some plays. And Zachariah Branch, but we got Red Morgan's just a true sophomore and really hasn't spent a whole season as a starter. He will next year.
Yes, he will. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I think he's a really good player overall. But yeah, I think up front defensively, I was really impressed with. I thought Tim Keenan wreaked havoc. I thought London Simmons made some plays. I was very impressed with Jordan Renaud. I really, and he made the early splash play that really stands out. Where a lot of when you make a play like that, a lot of fans they'll come away thinking, "Oh, he played pretty well because he was a backup. He would, you had to rely on him more." Especially if you make a couple of those, then fans be like, "Oh, Bernard played well," and then you go back and watch, and you're like, I mean, he made some good plays, but he also was very inconsistent, and there was some inconsistency there. But I was actually really encouraged. I think that was a proper reflection. If you came away with that thought on Renaud, I don't think you went through the right process to reach that conclusion, but the conclusion was the same, I guess is my point. I thought he did play well. He made 3 or 4, and I was putting together kind of a montage that I'll probably post on Twitter of some plays that he made. And he was just, he was solid. I mean, I had a couple of pressures, was decent as a pass rusher, really good as a run defender, which is where he's going to be his strongest. What I came away thinking was, okay, if Keeley continues to develop, if Cavante Henry, who we thought we might see some, we did not, but if he continues to develop, maybe, some of these other guys from a pass rushing perspective, Jamarian Matthews, if he comes in, maybe a Nolan Wilson, if he's playing some bandit, if that's where they start him off at, I could see some of these other guys being, some situational pass rushers. But for the early down stuff, I feel way better about Bandit than I did pre-Saturday, just because I would have thought you got some dudes, but there's some question marks. But I think Renaud has really come on, and he can do some stuff. He can be kind of a 3-down guy. Not going to be as disruptive or as effective against the pass as LT Overton, but I think overall you can still get effective play there, and you've also got some other players who are ready to step up. So, James Smith played pretty well. Edric Hill, I think, played pretty well. Like, I was actually considering how limited they were without a key player like LT Overton and a guy who could have not only helped as far as, your standard looks, but also the fact that you were going a lot of the 3-4 personnel, and Kelby Collins was that 3-tech type that's also very comfortable kicking out and playing 3-4 defensive end, 4-4-eye, maybe a 5-tech on the outside shoulder. Like, he's comfortable doing all that as well. Maybe even could have helped at Bandit. I don't think they really trusted Keeley a whole lot in those early down situations. He had to play it some, but if you had Kelby Collins, I wouldn't have been shocked if he played some Bandit in this football game. Like, having him out, those are two pretty key players. I think overall they actually got really good effective play from their defensive front.
Yeah, I like what you said about Bandit. I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously you see what's in the transfer portal, you see what's out there. Also remember this, especially the way Courtney Morgan and Bob Welton and them build this. It's not just about, hey, are there any stars that can help you make a difference in the transfer portal? It's the cost analysis. They'll pay a certain amount for what they perceive as a player, but if they perceive a player is worth $8 and the kid wants 10, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, but they will pay 8 if that's what they perceive the kid's value is, and it's a need on the team. And some kids out there will take less to play at Alabama. That's a huge advantage. We used to call it a Saban discount. That still exists. Maybe it's not as steep. Maybe it's not as sharp, but it still exists. Georgia is a huge beneficiary of that right now. People are like, how did Georgia sign so many players in recruiting? Well, some kids are agreeing to take less there or even none just to play at Georgia because they're so good at developing NFL talent, no different than Saban did. Alabama's still just about that level. But anyway, getting back to Bandit, whenever I talk about, hey, next year, I always say to myself, what I always use is 1 year better. Renaud and Keeley will have to replace LT Overton. How's that going to go? Well, let's remember, Renaud will be 1 year better. Keeley will be 1 year better. I think it may take the two of them to replace Overton, but if you kind of think about Jordan Renaud, good against the run, Keon Keeley, probably the superior pass rusher. But is Renaud as good against the run as Overton? Maybe 1 year better. Renaud, he's in the ballpark. I think Keeley might actually even be an upgrade as a pure pass rusher from the outside, especially a year from now. He might be. I'm going to hope that's the case. But I think with Renaud and Keeley, I think Alabama be fine at Bandit. Henry coming along, 1 year better for him. And who knows, Jamarian Matthews, Nolan Wilson, one of the two might be able to help you as a situational pass rusher off the bus. Maybe. So I think Alabama's in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, I mean, and what I will say, Keely's still got a lot of work to do from a technical standpoint. He's
Yep.
got a lot of just natural ability. Would like to see him continue to work and hone in because I do think the upside as a pass rusher is probably where his strengths lie. One of the things about LT Overton that makes him so effective, and Kane Wommack has talked about this, but just to reiterate it, and it's something that I think they're going to miss without LT Overton next year, is his ability to be an on-body rusher,
Yeah.
his ability to transition, where it's an early down and you think it's a run down, but then all of a sudden they hit you with play action or they decide to drop back and throw the football, and you've got to transition from being a run stopper, which is very different technique. You haven't pinned your ears back to immediately getting into a pass rush move. Having the ability to transition quickly and efficiently can make you a good, impactful rusher on early downs when you can do that. Some guys, it takes them too long to really get going. And so if you think it's a run down or it's a run play and it ends up being a pass, the quarterback has more time. But if you let that same player, some of these guys, it's like, okay, if you know like it's 3rd and 15 and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt they're throwing the football, they're really good, efficient pass rushers, but they just have a hard time transitioning. So that's an element or an aspect of this that A, I know Kane Wommack very much values. He's brought it up on multiple occasions, but B, I know LT Overton, due to Kane Wommack bringing it up, and you can see it on tape. It's pretty evident. Very good on body rusher. That's something that I don't think Keely does nearly as effectively, and it's something that even Renaud, I don't think he does that nearly as effectively. So that's going to be something. Continue to work and get better on that as best you can. But LT is kind of one of those guys that probably doesn't get the recognition that he deserves because he's a very, very disruptive player. And him playing alongside Tim Keenan, who's just an ox in there on the interior, he played great. Isaiah Faga, that's another one talking about defense. Like I thought he only played 13 snaps, but I really thought he played well. He had one play down there on the goal line where he worked across multiple gaps, worked across the face of the offensive lineman. I think he was working from the backside A across the center's face, maybe into the front side A, but then he had to continue to work across and then actually maybe ended up in the B gap and made the play, the tackle for loss, or maybe tackle at the line of scrimmage. That one stood out. I thought that was great. A great job by him. I'll try to share that on Twitter if I can so people can have a reference. But up front defensively, I was really impressed. And overall defensively, I thought they were pretty, really good overall. Had some problems, like I said. You hate that they've been really good in the red zone this year. Was not nearly as effective there, but overall, got to be happy with the way that they performed. Jimmy, we're going to be getting to the other side of the football, but we're going to let this show come to a close. Appreciate you hopping on here with me. Do you have anything else about the defense before we hop out of here? Okay, couple quick points. One, Damani Jackson. Agree with you. You brought him up, but this cat deserves praise. The physicality in which he played with when he was, no offense, soft against Georgia in the first matchup, he answered the bell. He stepped up, and I was so proud to see that from him because there was a lot of bad happening on Saturday, but seeing somebody that really took that challenge has earned his way. I understand Xavier Brown went out of the game, and that presented Damani with some opportunities to play, all of the snaps or pretty close to all the snaps. I think he was only off the field for like 7 of the 69. He was going to play a lot. You could tell. He got the start over Dijon Lee, and he was fantastic. Cam Calhoun, limited snaps. I don't know how many he played, 4, so didn't play a lot, but he got tossed out of the Auburn game, so he was going to miss the first half. So that was 4 snaps in the second half. I thought he was good as far as triggering downhill, like the click and close, the ability to do that as a corner. He displayed that over on the sidelines on one snap that I'd watched. Loved seeing that from him. I don't know what's going on with Xavier. They expect him back, but I don't know what will happen with Cam Calhoun in 2026. But I did want to give him a shout out because on his limited snaps, he did play extremely well. Do you have anything else as far as quick thoughts before we hop out of here?
No, those are good good thoughts. I'll say as Oklahoma struggles on offense, and as much as Alabama played well this past Saturday, and again good enough to win the game, Oklahoma is going to give you an even bigger opportunity for the defense to make an even bigger statement because Oklahoma, in my opinion, isn't as good on offense as Georgia. Uh, and I think the defense has a heck of a chance, even banged up like they are. But I think the defense has a heck of a chance to make a loud statement in Norman. And just, I hope they're challenging themselves to give up nothing. I know it's a huge ask, and I'm not predicting that is the actual outcome, but that should be the challenge this week. Give up nothing. In Norman, I think they could do it. I mean, this is a good defense. I believe second best defense in the league behind Oklahoma.
I like it. All right. Well, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order, and we will talk to you guys soon.